what did Bryson know about this driver that a lot of us didn't? Because it takes a lot of balls to call out one of the most iconic par fives in golf and say that you're going to take it on over the water with a 6-year-old driver. Needless to say, that's exactly what he did, and let's talk about exactly why this driver head was the one to pull it off. Now, firstly, shout out to 9 Night Golf on Instagram. They kindly sent me this Cobra driver head as I've been long awaiting to get my hands on it, because ever since Bryson pulled off that 370-yard drive, well, it became rather collectible. We are, of course, talking about the Cobra LTD driver. I'll show you some prices of what this roughly is going for, which is still extremely expensive considering how old it is. And that's mainly due to how little of them are out on the market. Now, sadly, we don't have the LTD Pro version. We have the LTD, which means that this is lofted at 10.5, but I've lofted it down to 9 degrees. And Bryson would have been using the 9-degree head lofted down to 7.5. Which is exactly what we're going to be talking about. Why was this head so pivotal? Why was this the head Bryson wanted to use that year? Because year after year, don't get me wrong, when it comes to manufacturers, a lot of the stuff they put on the back of their heads could be classed of more of a gimmick opposed to actually having a function. My Golf Spy does a very good graphic of a center of gravity of a driver head and basically how little movement there is in terms of changing the center of gravity in a driver head. We're talking from an ultra low spinning head to a very forgiving driver head with all the weight at the back. And this is mainly down to the fact when it comes to drivers, especially adjustable hosel drivers, the majority of the weight in this head is around the heel, meaning that when you start putting weights around the other side of the head or further back or in the face, yes, it does move the center of gravity, but maybe not as much as we're led to believe in quite a lot of marketing campaigns. But believe it or not, that tiny little SIM card in terms of the amount of movement there is in the head and where you can move it up, down, back, forward, does have a difference in terms of the way the ball launches and the way that the ball actually spins off the face. Oh, a cheeky 320-yard drive. Now, I'm a big fan of Bryson, not only for the fact what he's doing for a long drive, but his technical thinking around the driver head itself. And he's not afraid to go back in the years to find a head that will suit for him at that time that he is swinging it. Not to mention the club head speed that he was able to produce. And it's only in the last 3 months I finally understand what he got onto all those years back. Loft is a major factor in hitting longer drives. But at the same time, the more you de-loft a head, the less likely you are to get a decent shot off, especially on the bad ones. He had that week a drive at 7.5 degrees, the LTD Pro, a 3-wood at 10.5, and then a 5-wood at 13.5. Again, the reason why I love this is that it isn't conventional. Too many golfers go out, buy a set of clubs and go drive a 3-wood, rescue into the set of irons, not thinking on the yardages or the shots that they need from that particular club. You could easily say that Bryson had 2 3-woods in the bag that week, which for a lot of people wouldn't make sense. But that slight change in 3 degrees loft between one fairway wood to another potentially would mean 20 to 30 yards difference in terms of shot, mainly because the amount of backspin he would have produced with one fairway wood against the other. So why was this head different? And ultimately, the interesting thing that I found through all of this is that he could have an LTD Pro 7.5, which is quite high lofted for his kind of club head speed, and to get the same kind of results, he would have had to use the speed zone at 5 degrees, almost 2 degrees less lofted. And ultimately, why would that be? Again, my Golf Spy did an incredibly good graphic and testing in terms of the LTD Pro driver and how it was kind of off the charts in an area of all of its own, which is unheard of when it comes to driver manufacturers. And it was so far out the realms in terms of center of gravity, but then at the same time, a certain level of forgiveness that no other manufacturer even came close to the same kind of results. Oh, go on, get down there. Get down there. 330 yards. Now, I'm not giving this the full treatment because I've got the LTD version rather than the Pro version, meaning that it's lofted at 9 degrees opposed to 7.5. And loft is the all-important factor. If I was to swing this faster, 120, 125, which I'll show you in a second, that's just going to increase. I've got an X-stiff tensile shaft in it, but sadly, at this kind of clubhead speed, numbers there, that's as good as you're going to get from this driver. For example, let's ramp it up. Let's go a tiny bit faster and see what kind of distance we get, even if we get a lot more clubhead speed. That is pretty well hit. 120 miles an hour, 4 miles an hour faster, a lot more ball speed at 175 miles an hour, yet you can see 3,200. Same swing path, same angular attack, maybe a tiny bit more launch, but we've almost lost 30 odd yards. And as far as I'm aware, even with the rad speed, speed zone, LTDX, whatever you call it, he was lofting those down to 5 degrees to potentially get the same kind of launch and spin as this one right here. Now, as I showed you in that graphic earlier, there's a few things Cobra was able to do with this head, and that spaceport in the back isn't there just for show. Firstly, it was able to save weight, again, obviously able to move that center of gravity even lower and closer to the face to help launch and obviously create lower spin drives. Number two, it was actually to be removable. You could take this out. Cobra wanted you to look inside the head, but at the same time, it meant that they didn't have to use the glue that most manufacturers have to use in the head, i.e. if a bit of debris comes off the face or inside, becomes loose in the head, all of a sudden you'll have a rattle. If the glue wasn't in place in those heads, you'd be somewhat distraught that your brand new driver now has this annoying sound every time you take it back. Whereas with the LTD driver, you can obviously take that spaceport out, take the bit of debris out, put it back in, and then off you go. However, you could also argue because the face is somewhat thicker, potentially not giving you as much ball speed as, let's say, the newer, more current Cobra drivers. That's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of Bryson's swing. Very similar to my long driver heads that I have here in the studio, these are actually thicker, meaning you're going to get less ball speed off these than you would a modern day driver. The reason this is so important, especially for Bryson, is that you want to be able to practice with the driver you're going to take to the tournament the next week. And after 20, 30 shots, especially at 130 miles an hour, which Bryson could have easily achieved at the time, you're potentially going to crack faces. That head is going to wear away, and then ultimately you then have to swap out to another driver. And no matter how well you build a driver and the head weight and the shaft, is it exactly the same? Therefore, Bryson had a 7.5 degree driver that you could potentially practice with over and over again without a fear of the face caving in. And at the same time, because of the weight saving and where the center of gravity of the head is, he could actually loft it up to 7.5 and still get a relatively decent distance out of it. So again, thank you to 99 Gold for sending me their head, and hopefully you enjoyed this video of why Bryson gone so well with an old school driver head and thought a bit outside the box. If you like this video, you might like this one up here on the right hand side. Catch you guys there.